Welcome to another episode of Floyd Street's Finest, presented by Great Flood Brewing Company. I am Jeff Greer, joined by my pal Jack Grossman, the producer of this wonderful podcast. We got a special, we'll call it Christmaka, Jack. We'll have a Christmas Hanukkah combo deal today as we kind of take a pause, no pun intended, on Louisville men's basketball because they are on a pause right now due to COVID-19. Them and a lot of other programs. It's just like, I have notifications on my phone for probably like 6 to 8 of the national college basketball writers. And every time I go away from my phone and come back and I tap like the expand my notifications, it's Morgan State versus so-and-so canceled. Northern Illinois versus so-and-so canceled. Louisville versus Kentucky canceled. Louisville versus, it's just, it's incredible. So we have arrived at that point in our season. Hopefully this is not a long-term thing. As always, we will say, please go on to the Field of 68's YouTube channel and subscribe there. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also do us all a huge favor on the Floyd Street's Finest profile page, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure, if there is a mechanism to leave a review and rating, please do. That helps the old algorithm, as they say, to help other people find this. And of course, if you have friends who are Louisville fans or not and just want to listen to a Louisville basketball podcast for whatever reason, please tell them about us, Floyd Street's Finest. And I always also have to give a plug. It's sort of a combo deal, but the Floyd Street Tribune is my weekly Louisville men's basketball newsletter that will be that comes out every Thursday. I had hoped to do a Kentucky preview today and then have the Thursday newsletter be about the game. And instead, I don't know what to do on for Thursday's newsletter, Jack. But let's start here. Before we get into, I have some fun Christmas Hanukkah themed. Well, they're really, it's Christmas. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Hanukkah ended already.
Hanukkah ended, so I'm trying to be inclusive here, Jack. But we don't have anything that can have 8 answers with a 9th like cherry on top.
I think for the length of the podcast, it's probably a better thing.
Maybe, yeah, that's true. Maybe for each answer, we should spin a dreidel, and that's how long you have to get your answer.
I can run upstairs and grab one.
I love it. I used to be really good at that. But before we do that, we're going to do some different categories. It's not quite superlatives, but something along those lines. Let's just talk about the state of Louisville basketball, Jack, because this appears to be the end of the non-conference portion of Louisville's schedule, unless they can get the Kentucky game rescheduled. It was just postponed, not canceled, but Chris Mack didn't sound all too confident last night on his radio show that they would have another spot for it. The only time where Kentucky has an opening in their SEC schedule in the new year is when they play the Kansas game as part of that Big 12 SEC crossover. So it's not looking very likely that they will get the rivalry game this year, which means for Louisville fans, I'm sure I've already seen this a few places, it means they continue to be the most recent team to win the rivalry game, which of course is always one way of talking about it. But they lose to DePaul. They have a game that should have probably been a get-right game against Southeastern Louisiana and looked good, but not great against them. And the guys who they've been worried about did not get going in that game. And that carried over to a loss to Western Kentucky, which I was telling my wife this last night, Jack, if Louisville went into that game 8-1, for just as a random record, and they had lost to Michigan State, but nobody else, or, maybe lost a game down in the Bahamas and came back and surprised everyone, beat Michigan State, and they lose to Western Kentucky with the Toppers playing the way they did, hitting all the threes they did, obviously a lot of emotion in the arena on Saturday. I think we would be talking about this game very differently, but that obviously is not the case. And because of that game, it's hard to feel otherwise. Louisville is very much in a danger zone here. I'm not sure they did enough in their non-conference schedule to warrant an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure that the ACC is good enough right now to do them any favors, even if they were to somehow win 15 games in conference play. I mean, that probably would be okay for them. But anything less than that, and it's a tenuous position. But even more so, Jack, got to start wondering about just the overall situation at Louisville and the coaching situation. And they're starting to get a feel that there's maybe some hunger for a change in the fan base. At least something different. I think people were hoping that this year would be that something different. And it's just, as a whole, Louisville athletics is not in a great place right now. Having an interim AD, an interim president, people are ambivalent about their football coach. They're ambivalent about their men's basketball coach. But it feels very much like a danger zone right now for this team.
It is, and it is on two fronts. As you mentioned, the fact that they've lost 4 non-conference games and it's only late December, and the fact that you don't have the normal ACC to help you on the back end, to where I remember the last time Louisville lost to Western Kentucky, which was in Nashville back in the 2008-2009 season. Louisville didn't have a great non-conference year that year either, but they had, one of the best Big Easts ever, went and won that Big East with the number 1 overall seed. You just don't have that potential.
They had 3 1 seeds in that league.
Yeah. First of all, I don't think that this Louisville team is nearly as good as that Louisville team, obviously, but because there's not the returning talent of, Terrence Williams, Earl Clark, and all those guys. But it is a situation where you would feel like, hey, you pick things together, you figure things out, find your rhythm in the ACC. You would hope that would lead to halfway decent seed in most years, but this year in 2022, probably not. I mean, other than Duke, what is there in the league right now? I mean, Virginia Tech's all right. North Carolina, I think, is the 3rd or 4th highest team in the net rankings. They got smacked by 30 to a not great Kentucky team over the weekend. They aren't very good. I mean, Notre Dame's had the 1 win against Kentucky, but they aren't good. Syracuse is Syracuse. There's just not a lot in the league right now. So where this hurts Louisville a lot more than in other years, where Louisville's been in great basketball conferences consistently since they got into the Big East, they don't have that to fall back on this year. And that's where you look at these losses. I think Western's up to a quad 2 loss now, but that was originally quad 3. Furman's a quad 3 loss. DePaul's a quad 2 loss. There's just bad losses already on the schedule, and I'm afraid there's not enough chances to play quad 1 games. And then once you play those games, you have to actually win those games too, to make up for those losses, to where Louisville, I think, is in real trouble right now, missing the tournament, just playing a numbers game of, okay, here's where they're at, here's where they need to be. Can they get the wins necessary? It's going to be really difficult for them. They're going to have to, I think, win, as you said, 15, 16 games in the league, it seems like, to get an at-large. But even if they do that, they probably won't get a great seed, because the ACC, I assume, other than Duke, won't be seeded very well, because it's not exactly respected on a national scale. You bring up the thing about Western Kentucky. I think even if Louisville's 8-1, obviously it'd be more forgivable, but Louisville hadn't lost in bowling since 1950.
I know,
would have been mad. Mad if Louisville
got to win that game.
9-0. Like, I get it, Western's a fine team, but
they're a good mid-major program. And I know that people will be hurt by that, but you have to beat Western Kentucky. You have to. And I think the thing that was most troubling was you got run off the floor in the first half. I mean, it was just, they didn't look like they were ready to play. They didn't look like they understood what Western was doing. They didn't look like they knew how to play against a zone defense with a 7-5 dude in the middle. And it kind of reminded me of that Syracuse game in Mac's first year, when they end up losing by 20 at Syracuse and just never looked like they were comfortable in that game. The difference is, this team this year, and I've said this before, to their credit, they have runs in them. They have rallies in them, and they have rallied a bunch, and they rallied a couple of times against Western to get it back to 1 possession, 2 possession game. And they just never quite, in the games where they have either won or come close to winning, they took the lead again, or came close to taking the lead again. And And this one, they got within those like 2 possessions in the second half. It was 63-58.
They got within 2 at one point.
Yeah.
I think the biggest play of the game was Louisville was down 2 with the ball, and then Faulkner, he played probably his best game since he's come to Louisville, but he had a bad turnover and one on the other end. Louisville never got within a possession again. I think that to me just kind of sucked all the air out for Louisville in that game.
Yeah. Well, they got it to 63-58, and I tweeted this, and it has some of the most interaction I've had on my feed in a while. They're 5 possessions following getting it to 63-58. They missed 5 consecutive threes and did not get an offensive rebound. So
sounds about right.
That's and it's just problematic. And here's the thing. The offense, the thing that's interesting about it is like people, Ross McMahon's this, Ross McMahon. The offense is getting them shots. They're getting shots. They are not getting into the lane with their guards. And the guys who should be consistently making shots are streaky. Noah Locke, to his credit, again, you got to be fair in all this stuff because people just go black and white, not you and me, but a lot of people go black and white on this stuff. Noah Locke has been criticized heavily across this market for his start to this season. He had a great game against Western Kentucky, but he also kind of fell in love. Once he started feeling hot, he started pulling, I think, at times when it might not have been a great shot. But they fall in love with the 3 at the wrong times, it seems, and they kind of settle for them. And, it just, I don't know. We keep wondering if they were going to combine the defensive effort that we saw in the Bahamas with an offensive effort that we see. Quite frankly, like we saw against Western Kentucky, that offense was probably good enough to win, and they just could not get any stops. They could not run Cam Justice off the 3-point line. And it just, they just have not been able to combine the 2 things that are supposed to be working together. And it's just left us all kind of feeling like confused about this season because it's very up and down. It doesn't look good. And that's a problem. That's a real problem for Chris Mack and his staff.
Yeah, I think the Western game's a little bit different on offense for a couple of reasons. Number one, that Western was playing that zone, and just for whatever reason, Louisville was not attacking the zone at all. We're just happy to just sit around the 3-point line, pass the ball 1 or 2 times, and jack up a 3.
It looked like on College Hoops 2K8, Jack.
Yes, I'm playing NCAA basketball down. That's basically what I do. And I'm a lot more successful with it on it. But what's weird is Louisville, shot the ball a lot better than they had in a lot of their other games prior, even though I thought the offense was a lot worse. And sometimes, weird things happen like that. But there was a good graphic. I think it was JG Sports, no relation to me.
Me.
Yes, but I saw a graphic about a week ago, and it had a breakdown of basically a T-chart of made shots versus contested and uncontested shots. Louisville was all the way on the right edge of, uncontested shots, which means they're getting more open shots than almost anyone else in the country.
And they're missing a lot of them.
But they're missing all of them.
Yep.
So for me, I get McMahon's has gotten a lot of heat, and the offense definitely has been perfect, and there's definitely a lot that you can be mad with in the Western Kentucky game. But I think Louisville's actually gotten, the shots they want to get more often than not. It just comes down to they don't have the talent right now. They don't have the talent to all these guys that were brought in that were supposed to be shooters. You said it, they're all streaky, and there's going to be times where they hit a lot of shots in bunches, but there's going to be more times where you just have 6-8 game droughts like we've had the last chunk of games. And then on top of it, you don't have, probably more importantly, you just don't have anyone that can beat anyone off the dribble. You felt like
that's their number one offensive problem, I think.
Yep. L. Ellis, Sam Williamson, and Jae'Lyn Withers were supposed to be those 3 guys that could do it. And
only one of them's doing it.
And he's not playing enough to really do it enough. And I don't know if that, and I'm not necessarily blaming Mac in that Ellis hasn't done it consistently enough either. So I think it's a two-way street. I don't think you can just specifically blame one guy or the other. I don't think Ellis has done it enough. You've seen flashes of it, like the Michigan State game the second half when the game was kind of already decided for sure, but you haven't gotten it consistently from him to where you can expect it game in and game out.
Right.
And then defensively, I get it. They have good numbers. They were 12th and 10 pound defensively before the Western game. I don't know what they fell to.
They're now 20th.
20th. That's
they
still
dropped 8 spots.
Yeah, that's still pretty good though. I mean, 8 spots is a lot for one game, but you just have these lapses against Western in the first half and against Michigan State for the entire game where you just forget how to guard the 3-point line. And that's been a constant thing, kind of with Max defenses and just kind of pack line defenses that aren't Tony Bennett, where they just seem to have this kind of ability, or rather just weakness, of every once in a while you're going to give up a lot of 3-pointers if you don't rotate correctly. And that's something you can't afford to do in the college game today. So that's something you can't let happen. You have to make sure that you're crisp and clean and perfect when you're playing that back line, or else you're going to have instances where WKU and Michigan State both shoot the ball way better than their season averages.
Yep. And both of those teams have big physical point guards who could take smaller defenders off the dribble and get to where they wanted to be. I mean, Davion McKnight all season has averaged like 5-6 turnovers a game. I don't know what his numbers totally were, but and I've called a few of their games doing play-by-play. I mean, I think Western's good. I think they're pretty good. At least their front 6 is really good. They're still kind of thin on the bench. We're all waiting to find out when Keith Williams will get clearance from the NCAA to play for them, which will change the dynamic of that team even more so. But Davion McKnight did not turn the ball over. He had 2 turnovers against Louisville and had, I think, 10 assists or 9 assists, and did whatever he wanted to do. I mean, just did whatever he wanted to do. Cam Justice, a couple of the shots were contested, but a lot of the times, most of them weren't. And, you're just sitting there wondering, what is the plan here? And more specifically now, we've heard this a few times, you're going to get zoned. Louisville, you're going to get zoned. When is there going to be an answer other than they switched to zone and we didn't really know what to do? Which is just, it's
unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. And it's shocking to hear. I mean, it's just shocking to hear. And, again, you've got to think that there's the accountability and to, again, I try, and I know you do too. We try to be fair to everybody in these situations. Cause these guys are doing their best. It's not like they're not trying. I mean, Louisville's effort on Saturday was not a problem. It was not the effort that was an issue. And Max said that this was my fault. And so, to his credit, again, I mean, he's claiming accountability for this. But the Duke game still is seared in a lot of people's memories from the ACC tournament, where they switched to a zone defense and Louisville looked like, they were me trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, which is not a good thing at all. And it shouldn't be like that. People are going to zone you. You're going to play against zone defenses. There needs to be something different. And, I don't get paid to find that answer. And I'm glad that I don't, because I would probably not be very good at it, but
I probably wouldn't be either, but if anyone, once, I'd be happy, to make a little extra money on the side. I would say if there was ever a way to try to get Sam Williamson going, and they did it a couple times on Saturday, but I thought they should have really committed to it. It's just, you have a guy that when he's been at its best, it's been largely playing against zones, being in that high post area, and being really good in the mid-range. And I'm thinking, if there's ever a way to get him going, you would just honestly just commit 3, 4, 5 possessions in a row, even just for even if you're losing the game, which Louisville was losing the game on Saturday.
They never led.
Yeah, just for the betterment of the season, to try to get something out of this. say, we are going to try to get Samuel Williamson something positive that he can build on.
Yeah.
And outside of a couple possessions in the first half, they never really committed to that. And it would have helped, in twofold in terms of trying to get one of your most talented players going, and the fact of when you're facing a zone, you want to get the ball in the middle. I mean, it doesn't take someone that makes a lot of money to figure that out.
Yeah.
How that's just, kind of basketball 101 in a way. And obviously we're not going to sit here and fix everything that's wrong with the zone offense, everything with that. But step one's just get the ball in the middle, try to figure something else from there. Right. I mean, that's what you got to do.
Well, and Sam Williamson has been Jae'Lyn Withers has struggled all season, and I don't know. I'm increasingly at a loss for what's going on there. Still has done some good things, so it's like you see more flashes from him.
Were there any signs of either one of them because obviously, because you're, you get to go to practices and see everything behind the scenes every once in a while. Were there signs of this happening?
No.
For the two of them?
No, not even remotely. In preseason, I haven't been to a practice since the season started. But Sam Williamson he had a little edge to him in practices and was trying to dunk a lot on people, but also just look for getting to the rim. Wasn't shooting a ton of threes, but looked really confident. Jae'Lyn Withers, Mac would get on him a little bit about not dunking the ball at times and not being a little bit more aggressive, but still looked like a guy who is going to have a good season. And it's really odd. It's just really odd. Withers just has had a couple of games where, foul trouble disrupted him early. He's had a couple of games where he's done some nice stuff, and then he's invisible for long stretches, and it's very bizarre. Sam Williamson, I thought, was playing relatively well through the Bahamas, and then in the Michigan State game, he looks like a ghost and has those turnovers, and he played 4 minutes, and he has just not recovered from that. That was December 1st, Jack. I mean, that was a long time ago. We're now in 3 weeks of this. This is like, and I probably just shouldn't say it. I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of VJ King, like the yips. Just looks so uncomfortable at this point. And everybody seems to like him. Everybody seems to say, he practices hard. He does well enough. And obviously he clearly isn't, because he's not getting playing time these days. But when I saw him, he was. And I feel for him. I feel for him because he is talented. He is a talented guy. And these last couple games, he's missing fast break layups. And it just, something just isn't right. So that, in no way, shape, or form is that Louisville's biggest problem right now. But it's certainly one of the issues that they've got to figure out. I
honestly disagree with that. Just quickly, I think you look at Louisville and you look at the four guys that, for different reasons, people thought would be their primary scorers. Obviously Malik Williams is one of the most important people on the team, but people didn't think he would be leading the team in scoring because they thought it would be more defensively and stuff like that. Yeah. But for different reasons, in terms of, just pure talent, in terms of the coaching staff hyping him up, Jae'Lyn Withers, Sam Williamson, in terms of being the biggest program that you got to transfer from in Florida, and Noah Locke, and in terms of your most hyped up recruit in L.
Ellis. Yeah.
You thought those four guys were going to carry the load offensively and be your best scorers. And for different reasons, you haven't gotten that consistently. And it's different degrees of that for each player. But you don't have those four guys giving the output offensively that you thought you were going to get on a consistent basis. And for me, you can look at everything else for Louisville, and a lot of their issues go back to that court problem.
Yeah, That's fair. I mean, I think that I think that the biggest issues for the top three issues for Louisville are more collective personnel, inability to guard drivers, collective personnel not making open shots, collective personnel just being super inconsistent through stretches of the game in their decision making.
Right. And by no means am I trying to blame everything on those four guys.
No. I don't take that. Yeah. I don't think anyone would take it that way. But yes, having those two in particular figuring things out, I think would be a big factor for Louisville moving forward. Well, Jack, let's get into our categories. But as you know, before we do that, we got to give some love to our people over at Great Flood. They are going all out this season. Doesn't matter how the teams are playing. They're going all out during all televised women's basketball games, coming off a huge win against UConn, looking really good right now, especially defensively, and also men's basketball games this season. Our drinks at Great Flood are 10% cheaper for the entirety of each game. This pricing is available at both our Highlands Tap Room and Middletown Restaurant. We love hosting you and can't wait to root along with you as we cheer on our Cardinals. Thank you for your loyal support and go Cards. And as a side note, we're now expanding our options in our tap room for the first time in 7 years, offering wine by the glass and or bottle. And you can also get liquor and cocktails from their menu coming soon. And on Sundays at either location, you can enjoy endless mimosas. And Jack, also, you may have heard about this, but college basketball season is underway, but it's also starting to slow down a little bit. But before we get into our Christmas themed stuff here, I want to tell you also about our partners over at BetRivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with BetRivers yet, now is the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. What sets them apart is they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. Basketball season underway, so there's no more time to wait. Get in on the action today by going to betrivers.com or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. Of course, you've got to be 21 years or older. And if you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Jack, I think we know a few people who probably should be dialing that phone number.
Hey, I actually hit my teaser with BetRivers over the weekend.
There you go. All right. I like
lucky
it.
For once.
Good for you. Well, Jack, I created these categories because we were, this was going to be a Kentucky preview edition and probably a Kentucky reaction edition. We're probably going to have 2 in 1 week. You got to do it big for the rivalry game. And instead we do not have the rivalry game. So I'm going to.
So disappointing. It is. As someone who grew up here, it's just, I get it. Louisville probably.
They canceled Christmas. I mean, they postponed Christmas. Christmas has been postponed. So disappointing. We got to figure out a way to get this thing under control. I mean, I think we know how to, but it's just very frustrating. Yeah. All right. We got 3 categories here for you, Jack, and I'll start this one off because I know I put you on the spot right before we started here. Category number 1, all Louisville wants for Christmas. And I will go first. I don't think I'm going to be stealing your answer to this, so I'll just go first. So I've talked about this with Mike Rutherford. I've talked about this with a couple other like Louisville and actually some other non-Louisville people who have seen them play a few times. Chris Mack putting on a lab coat and a scientist, some goggles and coming up with a formula to make a combination of 2 players. Jared West and L. Ellis, put them together. You get Jared West, leadership, decision-making, the on-ball defense, all the things that people are raving about. He's a good passer. With L. Ellis's explosive athleticism and his ability to get into the lane, break down defenders, score. Combine those 2 guys, because otherwise you have to play them sometimes together or play them one off of each other, and it's not quite the same. Louisville is just really missing that singular dynamic guard. And it's painfully obvious on both ends of the floor. But if Chris Mack could come up with some sort of great scientific experiment where that could be wrapped up into one player. You wrap them up, put a bow on them, put them under the tree, and you have them ready for the Wake Forest game. I think they'd be happy.
I think that would be perfect because that's exactly the type of guy they need. And unfortunately, college basketball, there is a sort of free agency these days. There's no trade deadline.
That is disappointing. I do like the trade deadline.
But I'm going to go in a little bit of a different route.
Okay.
And it's a weird one, but I think it's one worth saying. I think all Louisville wants for Christmas is an IARP ruling.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
That's
and
fair.
I say that on a couple of fronts. Number one, it's now 2021, almost 2022. The
5
FBI
years.
stuff broke in September of 2017.
Yep.
Can we please just get the punishment and just know what Louisville has to face and just move on?
Yep.
I mean, that's not a new take. But number two, NC State got their ruling on Monday from the IARP. The IARP finally did something, and they made a ruling. And NC State gets off pretty much scotch-free. I mean, Mark Gottfried gets a 1-year show cause. They got like a $5,000 fine. I think it was a no postseason ban. So I'm sitting there thinking, like, I know it's not a perfect apples to apples because Louisville has the whole dynamic of being on probation because of the the Katina Powell scandal when all this happens, to where I still think they probably get hit harder than almost anyone else. But I still think you can say that's probably a good sign that NC State got let off pretty easily, to where maybe I had honestly been kind of expecting almost a 2-year postseason ban, more likely than not. Maybe, and you know more on this than I do, maybe now 1 year might be all you get if you get.
I will say with the IARP,
it's unpredictable, I know, but
I know nothing with IARP.
Yeah, but I think seeing NC State get that as their punishment, again, you have to qualify that with Louisville being on probation, but NC State getting that, I think, qualifies as good news potentially for Louisville, right?
Yeah. There's no other way to interpret it. I mean, I still think when you throw in probation, and you throw in now the stuff that has been added to the notice of allegations with the Dino Gaudio stuff, I think Louisville is in a far more precarious position than NC State. But if your starting point is what NC State got as its punishment for a $40,000 payment to Dennis Smith Jr. To make sure that he went to NC State, and in the eye side of things, the most we're talking about from a Louisville standpoint was what, a couple of like $1,000 cash payments that may or may not have even
happened. NC State had 5 level 1 violations in Louisville.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I think if they go the route of persistent offenders, which I know Louisville fans that would perturb them, but I think that is a real possibility. If they go that route, I think they could get hit pretty hard. But if they go the route of like the actual level 1 stuff in here is not as bad as it was originally portrayed to be. But there's a bunch of level 2 and level 3s. Yeah, maybe we just see scholarship reductions and fines, and maybe it's just one postseason ban. I don't know. Maybe there's not one. We'll see. But the IARP certainly, they're trying to figure that one out.
Would like to know what it is.
Yes,
I mean,
it's like discovering that Santa Claus existed. Like they actually showed up and made a ruling. So we'll take it. All right, category number 2, Jack. I'll let you answer this one first. Which other I narrowed it down to just ACC players. Which ACC player would you most want to see on this Louisville team to make them better? And I'm going to offer up a caveat.
I apologize in advance. I'm breaking the caveat.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
going to say Paolo Banchero?
I'm not going Paolo Banchero.
Ruining the podcast.
Yeah, okay. I'm not being that obvious, but
okay.
But I am going to say Buddy Boeheim, which is ironic.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I'm not really a huge Buddy Boeheim guy, but But I think Louisville, as much as, they need guys that can attack the basket and all those things, I think just having someone that you can count on every single game to just hit jump shots would be something that would help solve a major issue from this team. And he actually can create his own shot a little bit as well. So for me, one guy in what is not as good of an ACC as we're used to, as we hit on earlier, I'll take Buddy Boeheim. Obviously, if we're taking anyone, it would be Banchero, but I didn't full on break the caveat there for
okay,
you.
all right.
I didn't go full. Yes, on it.
Yeah, I would have been disappointed in you if you full on broke it, but
no.
And I would have made you pick a different.
As you should have, and I figure Boeheim's a fine compliment because he's probably going to be first team All ACC, but I mean, is he really in a normal ACC or first team All ACC? No.
I had preseason magazine stuff this past summer, and the people who come up with these lists and they send it out and they say, hey, we want your editing thoughts on this. And I mean, Buddy Boeheim was in like the top 10 players in the country on one list. And I'm like, no,
what are we doing, guys?
No, he's a fine player. I have nothing against Buddy Boeheim. He's a fine
he's
player.
The type of player that you should be putting for a segment like this.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he is exactly right. I had two, and I'm gonna. You mentioning Syracuse made me think maybe Cole Swider.
That'd be interesting
because he's a guy who you can play at the 4, who can make plays for his teammates. He's had a couple of games where he's had I think 5-6 assists. He can make threes. He's scoring and he's rebounding at a high rate. And I think as long as Jae'Lyn Withers and Sam Williamson are struggling the way they are, you've got to have someone who can do that. I mean, Matt Cross has been a nice player for Louisville. Dre Davis has had a good season so far, but they are really both small forwards, and they're not going to be guys who on most nights are going to potentially get you 18 and 10. They might get you 18 and 5, but they're not going to get you 18 and 10. Cole Swider can get you 18 and 10, 18 and 12 on some of these nights, which he has done with Syracuse. The original answer was a guy who I had heard wanted to go to Louisville, or at least was very interested in going to Louisville, and that's Blake Wesley at Notre Dame, who is a guy who can play a number of different positions across your backcourt and wings. Has shown a real athleticism getting into the lane, but he can also knock down jumpers, and has been a really nice early season not surprised, because obviously they recruited him and thought he'd be good at Notre Dame, but a guy who has played well for them, who I think would have been a nice fit for Louisville. Last one then, Jack, because I have not decided yet, but I'm kind of leaning towards we probably won't do a podcast next week. The holidays, my parents will be in town. I may just not do one next week, especially if the Wake Forest game is canceled. There's no reason to do one. So I want to get your New Year's resolution. I want you to go to another land, another dimension where Jack Grossman stops being Jack Grossman and starts being an inanimate object, which is the Louisville basketball program. You are Louisville men's basketball. What is your New Year's resolution?
All right. So how, and I have a lot of experience with this because I've been very bad at dieting over the years, but how it's like August or September and you say, I'm going to start dieting. Mm-hmm. And then you don't. Yes. You do it for like a week and then you don't. And then New Year's picks up and then you decide to try again.
Yep.
I'm going to say that's Louisville basketball with trying to attack the basket and get paint touches. After the DePaul game, Chris Mack harped on it a bunch, said we need to get the ball in the paint on every possession. And against Southeast Louisiana, Louisville did that. Mm-hmm. But, after that first week of the diet, you realize, this is kind of difficult. You see that's sitting off to the side, that chocolate chip cookie that you just can't say no to. And I've been there many times. But
I love it. I love a chocolate chip cookie.
Yes, and that chocolate chip cookie is the 3-point shot off of one pass against the zone. That's what the chocolate chip cookie is for Louisville basketball right now. So the new year comes, you get to rededicate of ridding your house of the chocolate chip cookie and trying to get a paint touch, attack the basket. I know Louisville doesn't have a lot of guys that are great at it, but I expect to see an invigorated effort, starting with the Wake Forest team or whatever the hell Louisville comes back from this pause. That is going to be reinstated. That is going to be a point of emphasis, and we're going to see Chris Mack harp on that again and again and again and again in terms of the New Year's resolution of getting back on the exercise bike, starting that diet again, and getting those damn paint touches.
Wow. Okay. That's a good answer. I had 2 written down, and that was a variation of one of them. I will stop falling in love with a 3-pointer. So we'll combine that for yours. That's good. My Louisville New Year's resolution is I will embrace the chaos of my team's playing style, controlled chaos, and press for 70% of the game. Because think about when Louisville has looked best this season since Chris Mack has come back. It's when they were pressing the ball and pressuring, picking up full court at times, getting turnovers. The run that they made against Western Kentucky just reiterated this point, that when they can get into some passing lanes, cause some problems. I know Chris Mack, from a defensive coaching standpoint, the concept of someone getting an easy basket on you, like, keeps him up at night. Like that's the entire basis of the pack line defense and the defensive rebounding practices that they have in place is they do not want anyone to score easily on them on any possession. Well, I'm here to say, gotta let that go. The team that you have built right now is not built to play that way. And they've got to be able to figure out ways to connect what they're trying to do on offense with with their capability on defense. And while I think that they've had a lot of games where they have played really good defense, don't get me wrong, but take the elements of that, stick with that when the press has not created a turnover and you can still stop the ball in kind of the forecourt area and you can settle your defense. But you've got to try to create more turnovers and more breakouts and more opportunities for your team to score some easier buckets, because they cannot get into the lane. There's no Carlik Jones to do that for you. If he was on this team, I feel like Louisville would be in such better shape. But he's not. And that's the bottom line is you don't have guys who can break people down off the dribble. So instead, get some turnovers in situations where you can get 3-on-2s, and get some downhill plays around the basket, get some layups, and get your easy buckets that way instead of trying to do it in the half court. So that's my New Year's resolution for
fans like basketball. That one. I can already tell you, fans.
I know fans like that. They've been all over it, and I get sort of the frustration of, well, I don't know if they have it. I don't think anyone in the program has it. I get annoyed. It's like, guys, he's not Rick Pitino.
Right.
He's not Rick Pitino. He's, Mac's not Rick Pitino. Tony Bennett isn't Rick Pitino. Just go down the list. Matt Painter's not Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino is a singular coach. Rick Pitino may be the single greatest defensive mind in the history of college basketball. And I get that there's a program identity that people identify with. How much of that has to do with the fact that he was here for as long as he was?
And maybe that's not pressed for 3 decades prior to that.
Yes, exactly. So it's like you've got 2 coaches for like 50 years who did something one way. And while that is successful, you hired a coach who does not do it that way.
Does it the exact opposite, actually?
Yes, it's the exact opposite. Now, that being said, I understand the frustration with this particular team because I think they have the personnel best suited to maybe start moving towards that a little bit more. So that's why that was my New Year's resolution. But Rick Pitino is not walking through that door, and 1986 Denny Crum is not walking through that door either. So, it's time to reconsider what the evaluation process is for your coaches. I would just say. I have now lost all of the people who would have been happy that I said they should press more.
Look, I love, I grew up on Rick Pitino pressing basketball, but that's not what Chris Mack does. And it's hard to, tell a guy, hey, you should do this thing that goes against every core tenet of what you do defensively.
Well, it's like telling your current significant other, you should be more like my ex. That doesn't bode well for a lot of people. Well, Jack, thank you so much. I know that you have already celebrated the high holidays with your family, but happy holiday season to you, my friend. And hopefully everyone out there just figures out a way to stay safe and stay healthy through these next couple of weeks. Hopefully this is a quick wave and things will go away again. Just, of course, it happens right at everyone's favorite holiday season for getting together, but hopefully we figure this thing out and get back to a little bit closer to normal in the new year. And let's get some basketball games played again.
And thanks, Jeff. Always happy to come on. That, and I appreciate it. And have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, buddy.
For you and your family, and hope everyone else has a happy holidays and a new year.
Absolutely. See you later, everyone.